Hello, everybody. Um, so, welcome to today's webinar. We're talking about Autodesk Forma, and we're going to be. If you were in my last webinar about the topic, it was mainly theory, and so you saw me out with the presentation, the PowerPoint presentation, and that was what it was all about. It was just to kind of get our minds around the theory. Today, it's a little different. There's no presentation in terms of PowerPoint. It's going to be a live showing of how the whole thing works. And we're going to start a brand new project, and we're going to talk about how the tools work and then how to export that out into Revit. So I've got a good show here for you guys. I don't expect that we're going to take an entire hour, so that should leave it open for questions. If you guys have any, I'll be happy to answer. So let's get started. Well, what you see in front of me here is the home page to Autodesk Forma. And this is a site that you're going to want to bookmark. So it's called app.autodeskforma.com. If you type in that /workspaces, then it's going to take you to the absolute beginning, the hub management area, which is what you're actually seeing here. And so the reason I start here is because I want to show everybody that you can be invited into multiple hubs. If you're familiar with ACC, you're familiar with the fact that every company can have their own hub, and within their own hub, they have all of their different projects, and they would invite you, if you were external to them, to each individual project as necessary. Well, a very similar idea is happening here, where you have a couple of different hubs that you can be invited to. So here you can see on the top, on the two left hubs, ASTPC, AST GRAITEC, AETG. These are two hubs that have been started by other members of my team. The PC is actually an actual individual. The AETG is a group. So the one on the far right, on the other hand, is my personal hub. And that's the first thing here, is that you can have a personal hub. The reason that that's happening is just because of the licensing and the way that we do it from the perspective of being a reseller. So everybody has their own thing. However, from a company standpoint, you guys would all be in one particular hub. So that's the first thing to keep in mind. Today, we're going to jump into my hub, where I will be able to start my own project. I could go into the other ones if I had been invited, and certain settings have to take place, and I'll be talking about those settings here today. So on the web platform, this is, again, the idea is very similar to the ACC environment, where you have that hub, then you have projects. And so that's where I want to start off with. You can select from your different hubs, whatever you're invited into. You'll notice that it says US, and that's because they do get stored on physically different regions. You might have noticed in the last page, there was a section on the top right that lets you go into the European region. So it literally is where the information is stored. And all that's going to do is improve the performance of being able to work in the environment, in the Forma environment. Okay, you can always get back into that by clicking on Manage Hubs right there. However, once you are in a hub, you have the ability to go in there. You can look at projects, and then you can see some sample projects that I've worked on. But here's also where you're inviting members. And so these members, now it's only me because it's my personal hub, although I can invite others. But here in this area is where you would invite, if this was the company hub, you would invite your entire company to go in here. And what that lets them do is then go into any project. Any project, unless that particular project has been determined to be invite only or locked. And you'll see that in just a few minutes. But that's the idea. So anybody that's in here does have the ability to go into all of the other projects, and depending on certain settings, they can either go in there and just observe or just go in there and make changes as well. I won't click on hub settings. It gives you my number, the particular number, and so you normally want to keep that information private, but settings are there, and they're pretty self-explanatory. I would encourage you guys go into your own hub settings to take a closer look at what is available for you. Mostly that's for administrators. Okay. I haven't organized my projects section. Unlike ACC, you can create folders in this Autodesk Forma environment. So you can click on the plus symbol for folders and add folders to organize your projects within a hub. Okay. we are going to start a new project. So I'm going to click on that new project button. And Forma is all about analytical information. So naturally, the very first thing it wants to know is the location of your project, because it actually takes into consideration the location on the globe to do things like sun analysis and things like that. For things like wind analysis, there's ways to make modifications to those things. It's not so realistic that it's going to know the winds specifically for a particular location. And for the sun, however, it does know that location, of course, latitude, longitude, and all of that sort of thing. So I don't know an address, but I'm going to zoom in, and you can do this both ways. You can type in an address, or you can just come in to an area and run your analysis this way. I can come down here and I can say I want to see this as a satellite view or not. Now I live in Houston, so naturally I'm going to come down to my city here. There's a particular park that I like, and it's called the Discovery Green Park. It's been there for quite a few years now, and it's this one right here. It's pretty nice. And so what we're going to do is our example is to put a building right here. Now this is actually a lawn, so I don't think a lot of people would be happy with that, but they don't know because they can't see what I'm doing. I haven't invited them to this project. All right, so I'm going to start off with a project name, project, and the first thing you're doing when you're identifying your work area is you're zooming into an area, and it's actually giving you, for the very first thing you're doing is it's actually giving you a plot of land digitally so that you can then come back and modify. Now this is coming to you from USGS. There are a couple of others, and we'll see that in a second, but this is just the default. So you're identifying those borders there. You can already see what's going on, some information about it. This is not the most detailed information. A lot of things with Autodesk, it's including Revit and analytical tools, all of that sort of thing. It's giving you broad range of information for you to get started with, for you to do things preliminarily with. Even with Revit, when you're doing analytical studies, is the same thing. It's giving you very good data, but it's not exact data. This is the whole idea behind BIM, is you take your project from Revit, for example, and then you export that out to an application that would do very detailed analysis. Same thing with Forma. So as you can see here, it's giving you a 1 meter resolution. That's 3 square feet of resolution. So again, not the highest resolution, but it's still quite good, especially for preliminary studies. Okay. Just be careful. You can get too zoomed in, as you'll see here. It'll tell you that this area is too small, and you could get too big. In fact, at some point, it does remove that box because it doesn't allow it for you to do that. But one thing I'd like to tell everybody is that as soon as you get that box, I wouldn't go in and say confirm this area yet, because of what will happen later. And I'm going to point that out for us here in a little bit. So what I like to do is I try to get down to the minimum here and then zoom out. Now this is because, of course, my project is small enough to fit. If your project was bigger, then you may need to go in and out. If your project was so big that you needed all of that space, I think that's going to be a limitation at the moment. You won't be able to take an enormous amount. I couldn't take the entire downtown area, for example. So I'm going to click on Confirm Map Area, and it's just going to create that project, run through a couple of things all on the back end. All right, so Autodesk Forma gives us 4 areas to start with of things that we can bring in, data that we can import into our project. Now, in the U.S. region, we are stuck with we're stuck with where that data is coming from. The Order Data button doesn't allow us to point to a different link to where it shows us different icons. Okay, that's in the U.S. region. I'm not quite sure why they done it that way. There must be some restrictions there. Maybe it's legal. You can, however, import in custom information. So if you did have, let's just say USGS 1 meter resolution was too broad, and you had your own terrain, information, then you can come up here, say import, and then drag in whatever files, and you can see there already the kind of file types that are available. I will mention that Forma, although it's still in its beginning stages, it has already been improved upon a lot since the very beginning of it. So, or since Autodesk started to maintain it anyway. So I do expect that even more file types will be available for us to bring in information from. Okay, but if you wanted custom information, clicking on that import will allow you to bring that in. Of course, it could be anything. It could be data that would describe buildings, or it could be data that would describe the property boundaries. Like if you have your own survey, you would bring that in so that you can see that line work on the ground itself. So starting from the left-hand side here, we've got buildings, terrain, roads, and property boundaries. So you can tell that this one has a downward arrow. It means it's already been downloaded. Remember, when we started our project, USGS was the thing that it was giving us. We could, however, change it up to be any of the other ones below here. Okay, and we should read this as columns. So buildings and then anything below is what's available for us. So it's giving us the ability to bring in information from different sources. So OpenStreet, that's a open source project. FEMA and Open City Model. So I'm going to say, okay, I want buildings in my project. And I got to mention that you want this as well if you're doing certain studies like solar analysis, if you're doing wind analysis, because those building models will affect the outcome of those studies. It will affect the data because, like, for example, in a solar study, the sun will hit those buildings and affect the analytical area that you're looking for. So keep that in mind. You do want this information. Again, you can bring in your own information as well. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Open City Model. I'm just going to go default along the top there. It's going to ask me what area do I want to go with. Now you'll notice that it's a little bit smaller. Sometimes that's the case. If I go any bigger, sometimes it won't let me because, again, each of these areas have a limit to the amount of information that it's going to allow me to bring in. So I'm going to leave it the way it is, although I could adjust these control circles around to fit better what I want. If it's too big, it wouldn't allow you to say order. Now, keep in mind this one is free. Of course, it's open source. The Open City Model is also open source data. And all I've done is I've ordered it, quote unquote. So what that means is I have downloaded that data and I've put it in my own project library. Okay. And you don't see the arrow, but that's because I had to hit the refresh button, and I don't want to do that now. It's live, so I try not to tempt the technology to break. So, but if I did click on that close and I hit refresh and I came back, the arrow would be down there, indicating that this is something I have currently downloaded. You can download multiple of the same column. You can do that. Same thing on the right-hand side. Why are roads important? Because that's actually what Forma is going to use to determine road noise. I'm going to hit order there while we're talking. But that's actually what they use so that they can determine when the noise that's coming from the road. And there are a couple of settings to set on that as well. We'll get to take a look at that in a second. And property boundaries, I'm going to click on that. Now there's that little asterisk. You knew there was a catch somewhere, and it says calculating price. That's because I believe they're going to be charging for this in the future. So as you can see, limited offer. Right now they are giving certain sizes for free, like the default size is free, what you see here. But that may change. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Again, this is mostly what you might get from a site plan that you might get from a survey. Rather, I should say, survey data. You would have survey data that you could bring in. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and hit on order for this one as well. So now we've downloaded all of the data that we're going to be using here. That's going to act as a background. So I'm going to click on the X symbol. And so you can already see what it's doing. Now, I don't know if you guys know Houston. Houston is actually pretty flat. There is elevation information there, so you can kind of tell. That's our version of a mountain, perhaps. Actually, that is a little hill that is in that park. So, like I said, it's accurate enough to do certain analysis, but it's not going to be down to the smallest unit. Now, what we see here are two things. We see the project at large on the left. Okay, so here we've got the navigator where we're going to be able to create different proposals. A proposal in Autodesk Forma is a collection of elements and settings that we're going to set that define a particular building setup, for example, or a particular project setup. Like maybe I'm going to have a building, like do I want a building that just lines this top portion right here where my cursor is moving, and then one down here, or do I want it to be all over here on this right-hand corner? Those would be two different proposals, because one proposal would have a building here, the other one would have the building on the other side. I can run analysis on both proposals and later compare them. You can add more than two, of course. So that's what the left-hand side, though, is all about the project. The right-hand side are the analytical tools. Let's look at both of these. On the left-hand side, I've got Proposals tab, I've got the Library tab. Now, the Library tab houses what we just loaded. This is why it can show us the download symbol. You can order extra data. So you see how you have the download symbols here? Well, if I come down here, I can order extra data as well, or again, import. Okay. Same thing is happening if I hit that little import button there. If you guys are familiar with Revit schedules, that's the same kind of look and feel of what it does. Multiple buttons gets to the same place. But you can also add custom data here, and we will here in just a moment. We will add a custom data to this library. So you can add your own data here, not just by doing an import, by the way, but by creating information or creating elements here, and you can put that into the library as something that you can use in other proposals. Other proposals, not other projects. Okay, there is a way to export information out into a like hub library. That's not what we're going to be doing here today. Okay, we have extensions. Now there are a lot more extensions than we had in the past. Already in just the last few months, they've already added a lot more. It started off with I think 2, and so as you can see, there's a lot more things here. Some of these may be free, some of these may not be, so you'll have to take a look and see individually. If it says provided by Autodesk, it's going to be included in your subscription. Okay. If it's not, however, you may need to take a look and see. We're not going to look at the extensions, I just want to show you that. Here on the left-hand side again, project members, here's where I can come in and I can invite other people as a viewer. So they can't change anything, they can just see things. As a collaborator, which means they could change, they could create, they could do different things, and then as an administrator who is allowed to then add other members and remove members from this particular project. Okay, that little lock symbol on the top, this project is open. Everybody in the hub can see and join this project. If you'd like to change that, and change it to invite only by clicking on that lock symbol. See, now nobody can come in. This is what I meant earlier when I said you have to everybody in your hub is going to be able to go to every project unless you click on a particular button, and that's the particular button. Okay, so I'm going to leave it open. I'm the only one in my hub, so I will just leave it unlocked. The less security you have, the better, the smoother your technical life will go. But of course, it just means more room for accidents. Okay. Same thing with Revit. I come heavily from a Revit background, so this is why you hear me talk about Revit so much. The more security your computer has, the more problems you will run into with Revit running it on that system. On the left here, compare. We don't have any data to compare in terms of proposal data, so there's nothing to compare yet, but we will get here again, and this is where you'll see proposals from studies. That's what the proposals are about. It's comparing different studies. So I'm going to start off under the proposals or under this navigator tab, and let's take a quick look at what we're seeing here. So we have a proposal called Proposal 1. I'm actually going to add a second one, okay, because I want us to start to see from the very beginning the differences, okay? That's going to give me that little introduction because it's a new project. It tries to guide you. So there's a lot of help involved in all of this. As you're going through the whole system, you'll see that. But you see, Proposal 1 is, you can think of it as a layer, I guess, in some sense, because what it contains here is for itself only. Okay. And then what proposal 2 has is also for what it's got itself as well. Now there is one change to that, or rather one caveat to that, which is on the bottom here, layers, you have a base layer, and then you have everything else. So anything under the base layer, and I'm going to go ahead and rename this from untitled base. So I'm just going to right click and say rename, and just title it the base. Right? So that's the base. That's what that's saying is that this base and anything underneath it, right now there's nothing underneath it, is going to be common for all proposals in this project only. So you can see proposal 2 is selected, and it's still called the base, right? So I'm going to go with proposal number 1, and I'm going to start to add data here, and we're going to start to see this taking effect. Now, a couple of the data that we're going to add comes from what we loaded. So I'm going to come to the library section, and I'm going to start to add some things. Now, I can't add USGS because that's actually what I am seeing already. That's the base. The only thing I can do is update that terrain. In other words, if the USGS site, the USGS people made a change, I can come here and update it. This seems very useless to us because what are the chances that they changed it from the last few seconds that I did this? However, this button is actually very good if you're using custom data. If you did import and you made changes, you re-uploaded it, you can click on this if it's your custom data and say update, and then you would see any actual changes you had made. Okay, so it's actually a very important button. We're just not seeing the importance of it because it's we're taking it from an official source, and they most likely haven't changed anything there. However, I can add everything else. So let's just go off to the next one, the one on the left-hand side, roads. If I click on this, notice what it's doing is it's giving you a little preview here. And notice this number, 65 selected. It's telling me that I have selected this many. If I hold down the Shift key, yes, I know I have a problem with that too because there we go again with Revit. Revit, Shift means deselect, and Control means to add to your selection. Well, in Forma, you got to get used to the opposite. Actually, there's just one button. It's just Shift. So if you hold on the Shift key, then you can add extra things, or if something is already selected, you can click on it to deselect it or click to add it. Okay, so that may be one of the things that they might try to improve on is the user interface. But you see that by default, all of the selectable elements are selected. Notice, for example, that this isn't a road. It's not allowing me to, doesn't read it as a road. Whose fault is that? That's the fault of the road data that we collected. So can we add something there ourselves? Yes, but not here. So I'll say add. That's everything that was selected. And actually, this is not even a road, actually, guys. I'm sorry. This is a sidewalk, but I'm going to add it as a road just as a way to. Same thing here. It's just a sidewalk. It is a park after all. So. But still, the reason it doesn't register as a road is because the data doesn't register it as a road. Okay, so I've added roads on there, and you can already see if I hover my cursor over it, I can start to select that data, and I can start to deal with things over here. And I'm going to get to that in a moment. Moving forward with the buildings, I'm going to go down to the buildings section. Clicking on that allows me to, again, see a preview. Hold down the Shift key to deselect or select extra of what you want, but the default is that everything is already there. So why is there no data for these things? Well, it looks like a parking lot, but even if there wasn't any data, again, I use the word fault, and what I mean is, how is that determined? Because the data source, in this case, whatever data source I use for the buildings doesn't have data for anything else in here. For example, this is outdated because there is actually a building there now. So that would be outdated data. I could put one in there if I'd like to. Okay, so I'm going to say add.
Hey Frank, I don't know if it's just me, but I lost your voice. Can you try to mute and then unmute your mic? Should be at the bottom toolbar. Has anybody else lost sound? Oh, there we go.
Hold on. All right.
There you go.
Oh no. Okay. So how long has it been since my voice went out?
Literally just maybe like 5 seconds.
Oh, good. All right. Good.
Okay.
Very cool. Yes, ma'am. Hey, thanks for bringing that up so quickly. I appreciate that. Yeah.
You got it. That's what I'm here for.
Oh, yes, ma'am. Well, very cool. So I understand I only got lost for a few seconds. So everything I've said so far stands, right? So we've set up the basic portion of our project, just general data that exists already. We're going to now start to add data to the project that doesn't exist. That's the proposal. But first, I want to look at what I've done. I'm going to go to the Navigator Proposal 1. Look at that. Under the base, buildings, roads, and property boundaries have been placed. Now, that's done like that on default. You can't actually always remove these things and put them under the areas above the base because some things are just hard-coded this way. That might be possible in the future. So a couple of things about what we're looking at now that we have some content. The lock symbol. The lock symbol simply means selection. So notice that if I hover over an area here, I'm having a little hard time there to, oh, it's already locked. Okay. See how I'm hovering over the property boundaries? See how there's a purple, magenta line, something like this? And as I hover over that area, it highlights. That's because it's unlocked. If I had checked it to where it's locked, I won't be able to select it. And that's kind of what you want most of the time when you're working on your own geometry. You don't want to accidentally click and drag something because you can. Okay, so you see buildings here. If I come over here, I just say lock, and there we go. I can't select it. I can still see it. Of course, we understand what it means. If we see those little eyes, it will always turn those things off. All right, very good. Well, I'm going to go ahead and unlock them for now. I do want to interact with these elements. Probably property boundaries, no, because that would be the one. I'll be touching on that a lot. My cursor will hover over that line a lot. But because it's under the base, it's now under the proposal 2 as well. So here you see I'm under proposal 2, and I can still see the same buildings. I'm under proposal now 1, still see the same exact buildings. So before we can run analytical tools, before we can really put Forma to use perfectly, then we need to create geometry. Now, we could run an analysis right now, and it would just respect these objects. I call them objects on purpose and not buildings because they are just generic objects. Forma doesn't consider them buildings, really. Okay, you can tell that's the case because already the default analytical tool is called area metrics, and you can see GFA and all these other values. Oh, there's more here. Yeah, RA, and there's another one. Yeah, BC. They're all showing up as 0, even though there's things here already. It's because it doesn't recognize it as a building. We're going to see how we can adjust that number now, actually. So notice you have the terrain, and terrain is available outside of the base, okay? Which means that I can come over here and I can say things like terrain mode, which will allow me to go in here and select different shapes. And you're going to see how we can create extra custom shapes because you may not want to modify this entire property line area. You might just want to modify a tiny little place down here. Let me show you how to do that in just a second. But the idea is that when you select an object in this mode, then you can come over here and make adjustments to it. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and hit back, and I'm actually going to press Control Z because Control Z is respected here, by the way. You can use Control Z. Okay. That way, any adjustments that I may have accidentally made, I just undo those. I don't want to make any adjustments to that just now, right now. Now, on the right-hand side, we have all of our analytical tools, and then here we have all of our creation tools. In development is the same as saying you're going over here to the extensions and you're using things. There's extra things that can be done in there. You can think of this as like in Revit, like Dynamo scripts, right? We don't have any of those here today. I'm going to start off with buildings. So I'm going to start off by hovering over that buildings command and creating a line building, a basic building, and a house. House is actually one of the latest things that they've added. They started off just with line and basic. So we'll go ahead and start with line. Now, anything you do in Forma, when you initiate a command or when you select an object in Forma, your first reaction should always be to look at the right panel and to go to the very bottom. Okay, because things like the area metrics, this portion right here will be adjusted as I select different objects, right? However, because I'm currently in the command, I can see something extra down here. Line building automation. Automation usually gives you that the idea that, yes, there's something extra going on here. And this is actually where you're controlling the geometry and the way it's shaped. So let's just take a look. See, you've got the width, you've got the number of floors. These are all defaults that I'm setting right now, but of course I can change them later. The story height, I usually like to say 12. That's a little bit more realistic, I think. And the section length. In other words, how often will I keep wanting to say Revit, how often will Forma break the model to subdivide it as an individual unit? Okay, and we're going to look at circulation and floor plans in a second. Okay, so I'll start off by saying that when you are placing things like this, geometry, Forma will respect the lines. So if I hover over these lines, I can start to, if I hover over them and I stay over them for a moment, sometimes it will use that to allow me to create things. Now, one thing here I can't do is interact with this as I'm creating it. I'm going to create my building starting off here, for example. You'll notice that the breaks, those lines that you see there going across it, those are the section breaks. In other words, it's just if we want our building to be built in sections, for example. Really, the reason for we would do this is because after we create our line item, we may want to have modular control just of this first section, the floors on that first section. If we didn't have sections, it would just be treated as one big thing. Maybe that's not what you want. If it isn't what you want, you could change that. You can say, don't give me sections. So just one big thing, or yes, give me sections. It's not referring to sections that you might see in a document in document development when you're in Revit. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and say I want this to be at 100 feet, and so you'll see now I'm restricted to 100. I'm going to click on the 2D to give me a better view. Yes, I know I cannot snap this. This is a thing that I don't like either. So I've got to do my best to just go in there and bring it in. One thing I will bring up to y'all's attention on this, on that front, is remember this is preliminary data analysis. This is what this is. It is still true that you will be able to export this out to Revit and just take off from this, but the placement might change. You can change it in Revit and bring it back, so not all is lost. So here I'm going to say I want 100 feet again, right? So it's restricting it to 100, but now I'm going to press Tab and say I want this to be 335 degrees. And so now it's stuck at that angle. I want to click on the outside to continue, but I'm just going to press the Enter key to say that that's what I want. Now I can press Escape. There's a little thing there. It's selecting the whole thing just to kind of move it around, and then clicking on 3D. There's the reason I made it such a big deal. Oh no, I pressed the wrong button. The reason I made that such a big deal is because I've been running into a lot of issues because I'm so used to Revit pressing Escape. Now here it's pressing Enter, okay, to finish the building out. So this is me creating a building based on line. If I go over here and I say basic building, then I see what it did there. If I say basic building, see the shortcut B, then it takes me to these tools right here. You can select an element that already exists. Now you wouldn't use this here because see it's selecting elements like the boundary lines. That's not practical. You would be selecting something you would have imported yourself from AutoCAD, for example. Maybe you already have the footprint of the building. You could just click on that to select the footprint. It does require that you import that CAD file first. I'm going to use Freeform just to show you guys a quick preview of the way these tools work. But this is not a training. This is just for me to show you guys everything you can do. So you see here it does actually respect things. So like, for example, I could say, look at the center. Hovering over it now allows me to use that line for something, okay? Now, in this case, the way I've placed this building, I'm not going to use it. So I'm just going to go ahead and start here. But you see that it starts to see if I wanted to do something parallel, I can just highlight over something. Actually, this one. And it's already parallel. I can give it a value. I'm going to say 25. This will just be a small one. And now I can go in any direction, click, See here, I can set the angle as well. I'm just going to worry about the distance. This is a small building, so 25 feet. And I'm using the tool itself to create my shape. Now, it's automatically going to close this, so look how I move my cursor way out there. I'm just going to press Enter, and it's done. Okay. Now it's just giving me what height I want to do. Let's just say that, let's just go with 20. Okay. And I'll press Enter. Again, it's Enter, not Escape. All right, very cool. So far we've got these two buildings, but you can now, well, actually notice how you can, when I do this building, it selects, by default, it allows you to select either floor. The line building selects as entire building. Why? Well, if you look at, again, this area down here, this is like the properties palette in Revit. This will tell you why. That little symbol, that little chain, it's a new thing, but that little chain thing, what it's doing is it's saying, look, it's all one unit. If you want to break it up into multiple units, just click on that symbol, and now you have, again, just like this down here, individual sections and individual levels that you can select, all of that sort of thing. I'm going to hit Control-Z, okay, for now. Same thing. This one's different because this one was created as an individual building, okay? However, I can still select these elements, and I can still come in here and make adjustments, like say, no, this should be 12, and this one on the bottom, maybe that one should be even higher. So let's just say 15 feet, okay? So we're able to go in there and make adjustments. These things Revit will respect when we import this into Revit. Revit will see these as levels. Revit will create levels as well. All that stuff is fairly new. Like I said, they're continuing to improve this all the time. All right, well, one powerful thing that you have here is if I select a particular unit, then I can come down here, and you can see again the properties palette, floor plans. I can come in and I can select a different floor plan or change one. Okay, so see, I have the second level floor plan and the first level floor plan. And the line work that I am creating on here, and I'm going to create maybe something a little bit absurd. I'm sorry. Let's see, maybe that's not too absurd. Yeah, I'm just creating some line work there just to create some geometry for me. Maybe something like this. I'm not spending very much time determining the distances and all of that. Just something to allow us to see the potential here. Okay, because all of this stuff you're going to see in Revit. And yes, these things get converted into walls. So no, you don't get to do doors out here. I have to find the first level. I could just do the same thing for level 2, and I won't. But I can just do things for level 2 as well. I'm going to go ahead and hit this little back button. You can see already the divisions. In Forma, they're just divisions. In Revit, they become walls. Okay. These are ultimately what we're doing in here is what we would have done in Revit with massing. These are just masses, basically. Okay. However, these are intelligent masses because if I select any of these objects, look at what else I have. I have the function parameter here. It says unspecified, and look at what this all means. Unspecified, if I look at this, tells me, look, it's as an unspecified element, I will be able to register it under the BC, GFA, I think that means gross floor area, and then RA. Okay. And it'll give me the multiplier. The check marks here means that unspecified will be seen when you look at the analytical data here. So you can see BC is included in that value. But let's just say BC and say, you know what, for anything that is considered unspecified, say, don't register it under BC. Okay? And same thing is going to be out here, unspecified. Let me just double check actually. Yeah, it's not up there. So you will see, or you should see, unless I'm seeing something else. Let me see what else. I'm not expecting it to have any number there because there shouldn't be anything. Anyway, it will reset that out because when you tell it don't register that number if it's considered unspecified, that's what will happen there. If I, however, and I can also, by the way, do this with other things. I could say, hey, this is considered residential, and because of that, residential gets applied to those numbers or not. You can determine all of that sort of thing here. Okay. Usually this is opposite, but I am going to I'm going to say this is residential only. Yeah, these are all the little nuances that it goes through. Okay, so that's that one. And the top one, see, I made a mistake. The top one, I'm just going to set as commercial. And look at what the settings are for commercial. So you are able to go in there and even mix and match the layers that you're setting there. You can set the floor plans as well. Parking has changed, actually. There used to be a button there for parking. It doesn't exist anymore. So if you go over here to parking, you have to set that as floor plans, okay? And you can set that up. Let's just select this line building here. I could say, hey, I want these to have, what kind of floor plan do I want? I can add a new one. I can determine that floor plan as necessary. Just do it like this. There's supposed to be a hallway there, so I would just say, again, sorry guys, I'm not an architect. I'm not making anything beautiful here. Just going to create some line work. And actually, I don't want that line there because I do want, well, I'll leave it like this for now. But you see that what I'm doing is actually applying it. Now notice where it's applying it though. See, it knows I'm applying it to the 40 by 50 units. I could say I want to apply it to the units that are this dimension, or this one right here. You're going in there and you're able to apply these things. And it gets deeper. I don't want to get into a training mode here, but you can go deeper. You can go to circulation, and what you're doing is applying hallways in this case. You're not doing stairs, so it's not that. Okay, so you can modify a lot of things there, and the same thing happens with everything else. Now we can do house. If I wanted to, I can go over here and do house. Same thing. Look at the properties palette there, and you're adjusting things: the roof style, the width, the height, how many houses, what's the distance between them, all of that sort of thing. I want to add a couple of extra elements here. Things like the tree line. So I'm going to go in there and I'm starting to add trees. The reason these things are important for me to cover is because these things do affect the analysis of the entire thing. Okay, so I'm coming in here and saying these trees are pretty tall. Let's just call these trees 50-foot tall trees out here in this area, and I can double click to adjust that as necessary. Okay. Now the analysis of this, and once you've created your model, your design, the analysis of this is going to be dependent on the analysis area. And you'll see that right now it just says entire site. That could work for some people, but that's not usually what we do. What we usually do is we come down here to say site limit. Okay, I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to go ahead and create a freeform line, and I'm going to use, let's just say I want to start from here. I'm going to hover over this existing line to capture it, and then I'm going to try to go parallel with it. Okay. Now I'm trying to work in 3D, so forgive me if I get this kind of sloppy, but you see what I'm doing here is I'm using the geometry all around, and then once I'm done, I'm just going to hit enter, and now I can hit escape. And I have now defined an analytical area, or what we call a site plan, or a site area, or whatever, I'm not sure the official name, but that's what that is. Notice that this is something that is not within the base. In fact, neither is the terrain setting. I guess I didn't do that one. The vegetation, the buildings, all of this stuff, if I go to proposal 2, is going to be different. Okay, none of that stuff exists here because that's outside of the base. If I wanted that stuff to exist on both, let's just say that I wanted the site to exist on both, I could right-click on it and say move to base, and now the site limit is for level proposal 1 and proposal 2. Maybe that's something common for all proposals. Okay. You also noticed that I can right-click and say add to library. Okay. Now I'm not going to do it for the site, but what that would have done is that would have put it right here under the library, so I can also click and drag. Okay. Or I can also apply it. Okay, so lots of different things there. In the same way, roads, railroads, all that sort of thing is going to get done. Now, let me just do, and I'm also trying to be cognizant of the time here, I'm going to add something a little bit funny. I guess it's not very practical, but let's just add a road down this side here. I know it's not connecting to anything. I would make it connect, just to make it more realistic. However, the idea is place your roads where you need them. Because of the design here, I'm just going to do it this way so that way we can have content, really, is what it is. Same thing is happening for railroads, okay? And I'll add one right next to it, just for again, just to show you guys. However, my design is not in question. What's in question are things like the settings and all that. So now, let's just say I'm done. I've done my model. I've done it for the other one, proposal 2. I've gone through the time. I can copy between them, by the way. So if I do like this building, I could just select that building, Control C, go over to building proposal 2, Control V, paste it, and that's fine. And I can modify one, and it won't modify the other one. So all of this stuff is good. It's just a copy. But once you've got all of that done, analytics can then come in and play a role. So let's take a look at a couple of these. I'm going to start by going to the sun hours. Now, when I do any of these analytics, even the area metrics, it depends on what your extents are. Okay, so I've already added a analytical site plot there. So if I select just that, that's that, and only the elements that are within it will excuse me, get analyzed. Okay, and that's what you want when you're doing things like these other analysis. Like the sun, you might want to do the whole thing, honestly, but you might just say entire site. But for some of these, maybe a more localized thing like the noise and all of that, you might want to do more local, because you don't care what's going on way out here for noise, and it will take a lot longer to analyze. So let's just say that we're going to do a sun analysis. We're going to use the entire site, and we're going to say that we want to do this for March 20th. That's actually my birthday. And I'm going to say run analysis for the entire site. Say run analysis. Remember that it's good information, but it is more broad than you would get from an analytical tool that just analyzes. That's all it does. Okay, that's why we can afford to see this live, and all these analyses are going to get done within the time frame that I'm talking with you guys in this webinar. Otherwise, it could take longer. And some of these tools, see there, it's done. Some of these tools then tell you a little button here that says, do you want me to run a deeper analysis? It's going to take maybe 5 minutes, maybe an hour. That's more realistic because it's doing a lot of calculations in the background. Open the last analysis or view the history. We don't have any history. I'm just going to click on open the last analysis. And we can already start to see some analytical results in just this quick hour. We can already start to see some things. And it's trustable. This information, again, is not down to the inch, but you can see that it's giving you a very good idea of what's going to happen. It's considering where north is. It's considering the sun, of course, coming in from east to west. It's considering any buildings in the way, any trees, the building itself, if it's in its own way. All of that sort of thing it's taking into consideration. Okay, so here it's doing analysis on other things. Look on the right-hand side here. I can say I only care about it from 8 to 5, and it's using military time, so 8 to 17. Okay, and so then it'll just keep it at that. Now, sun, it's a little bit less important to do it this way. Let's say maybe we can do something like this would make more sense. Let's just go from the hours of 1 to 5. See, that makes more sense because it's cutting away the entire morning. So you get to see now there's two things that right now we support, square footage and percentage amount of sun on your model. Okay, so you are, however, just reviewing the results of your analysis. It's going to store that within your project. It's all stored on the cloud. None of this, it's in the web browser. None of this is on your local machine except maybe your temporary folders. But that's about it, okay? And I can run a couple of other ones. I can run multiple dates at once as well. Of course, remember, that's going to cost you time. So keep that in mind. And so that's a very good one to get started with. Let's take a look at another one like noise. So for noise, I actually want to tell it, no, I want you to use a site limit. That's the one right there, okay? So as you can see, it's gonna know where that's at. And I have defined its limits, and now I can come back here and look. It says road, it's all green, rail, it's all green. Now, why is that the case? We know that's not true. That's because we got a couple of settings to set in particular for those elements. So if I select that road, for example, and I come down here, I can change its traffic information. Now, I think I need to do that before I even try to run the analysis. So I will get out of this and just set that first. Oh, it's within the base. So let me show you something real quick. I can't make these adjustments because I'm adjusting something within the base right here. And so I need to click on Edit Base. That is, edit all of this. I could have done the same thing by right-clicking and saying Edit Base. And once I do that, I have access to all these things. So I'll select Road, and now I'm going to go back and make adjustments here. So it will only consider noise from vehicles that are moving, I think, faster than 5 miles an hour, something like this. I think it tells me right here. No, but anyway, 5 miles an hour. I'm going to say this road in particular is going to be, let's just go with 45 miles an hour. We know this is not true. You got to fill everything in. So what's the active daytime use for this? Let's just say that it is 50% of the time it's being used. And then let's go ahead and say the same thing. Say the same thing for, go ahead, done there. This one right here. I'm going to say add some noise. Let's just say that you're going at 35 miles an hour and you're being used, 20% of the time in the day. And now that we have information, as you can see, these elements are getting smaller. Now we have some information. We can now run that analysis. I can say noise. It's going to run a quick analysis, and it's going to give me, again, remember, this is noise, not anything else. It's going to give me analytical data. I can split it by road. So I can say, yep, this is how much noise would be coming from that road. Somebody, I'm in Europe somewhere, I think it was Finland, they used Forma because they had roads on all four sides, and these were like highway roads, and they were trying to build a dorm. So, of course, you want more quiet. So they used this to come up with a particular design, and it was, I don't know if it won any awards or anything, but it was considered a big deal. I believe it's in Finland, and they used Forma for it. They used this very tool right here to start to adjust things. As you start to move your elements and start to rerun your results, you start to get different results. See, it's greener over here, it's quieter down there. Lots of different things, and not a training, so I don't want to go through every little click there, but you're running all these things, and you're running multiple analyses. I might have gotten a little excited, so so we would do the same thing for the other proposals. We can come down here to the area here, and I can start to drag, say, for example, for let me show you both proposals. Yeah, I didn't run any proposals for proposal 2, but for proposal 1, I ran the sun hours, for example, and I can come over here and see it. And had I run analysis on proposal 2, I'd have put it on the right. I want to skip that because I really want to show you that you can put this in Revit now. So it's causing me to reanalyze this stuff every time. Like you have some times where you can run detailed analysis. So I like to tell everybody, click here under area metrics. That's going to be the easiest or the lightest one. So if you're on that, that's kind of like the default. Okay. Now we've got all of this stuff here. Maybe I should move this building and not let it cross into the other one. And then on the right-hand side here, I could send any of these proposals out to Revit. You do need to download the Revit add-in, send to Revit. It's still in testing, but it's still doing a pretty good job. It had its problems, actually, in the very beginning. You were not able to see, it wasn't really respecting your site data, but now it is. So you see what I've done here, I've sent it off to Revit, and then it can go into Revit. 2023 and 2024 are supported. I'll start a new project. It has no knowledge of this project. You don't have to do anything to connect it because it's in the cloud. It's basing it off of your username. My name here is Frank Limas, but I'm also signed in as Frank Limas. That's my browser into this project. Okay, it doesn't show me here, but that's the way it works. So when I come over here, Revit says, hey, Frank Limas has uploaded the proposal. Go to Massing and Site. Come down here, set any options that you want. I just leave it to these, which allows me to create actual walls for those lines, merge walls on adjacent levels, so on and so forth. Extra things, the more you put, the slower it moves, so be careful. And then I'll just say load proposal. Okay, so it's going to take a second here. It's going to preview something. I'm going to say load. Again, the more of those options you have checked on, the longer this process takes. It already takes a few seconds here, so just be careful. It's not. I mean, they're working on making it bidirectional. It is already bidirectional, but there are parts that can get improved. So it's always getting better. Okay. Now I'm looking at the world from level 1, and see it's giving you attribution information because the data that you're using is not yours. You're taking it from someplace. So it just tells you this. So at some point, so this might be something different for you guys. If you guys are going to use this, you need to add a source somewhere in your documentation. The view, a sheet, probably a sheet, the beginning of the sheet. Keep that in mind. You don't want to get in trouble. So it's taking me over to 3D. You can see that yes, it's giving me the actual surface of it there, and it's giving me geometry. Notice this geometry is actually a wall. These are actual walls. This may not be what you want. Like for example, see it's creating this type for you, just a basic wall of a particular strange thickness. Okay, you might want to go in there and change it. Of course, make sure you consider yourself with the location line of that before you make changes. And it is actually creating levels for you as well, but it's not creating views. Okay, so be careful about that. Obviously, the names are very off, so you'll need to determine a way to do that. The takeaway here, though, is see how there's our design right there? The takeaway here is it's creating actual walls for you if you set that in the settings right here, load proposal, load options. Otherwise, you would treat it as a conceptual map where you can then select things to create them into walls, floors, and roofs. Modifications you make here can be done. So, for example, making a modification can be done, and you can update the proposal. It goes backwards, okay, and that change occurs back over on the other side. Big topic. Lots of cool stuff. Get into it if you can. The earlier the better. You can stay on top of all of the different changes. I left 1 minute for questions. Any questions?